With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories. New mobility coaster enhances accessibility for vulnerable groups in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Young musicians are set to shine at upcoming recital in Gingerland.
Police charge Aubrey Webster with the murder of Iselin Pitt.
St. Kitts and Nevis not in drought alert zone, but authorities continue to encourage preparedness and responsible water use.
St. Christopher National Trust provides update on Treasury building restoration. The Consolidated Contractors Company Caribbean Incorporated looking to alternative markets. International Labour Organization Annual Labour Ministers Meeting opens in Guyana. Internationally, U.S. to hold direct nuclear talks with Iran. Now, the details. A new mobility coaster promises to significantly improve accessibility for individuals with disabilities, seniors, and those facing mobility challenges who participate in programs offered by the Department of Youth Empowerment, Aging and Disabilities. The acquisition marks a step forward in ensuring inclusivity and support for these vulnerable groups. The Honorable Iselin Phillip, a minister responsible for aging and disabilities, emphasized the importance of the new vehicle in expanding the ministry's reach.
This bus, it's really intended to support and expand the scope of work for our ministry by allowing us more flexibility to transport our clients in relation to the ministry's programming.
The minister also expressed gratitude to key partners.
Thank you, of course, to the government of Taiwan through our embassy and resident ambassador, Michael Lin, for providing the sponsorship. And of course, to TDC Automotive, thank you for taking the time to source the bus, make sure that it's customized to our specifications.
Philip concluded by underscoring the government's commitment.
This is just part of the work that our ministry has been tagged with and mandated to do, and of course to ensure that no one is left behind. We recognize that mobility and access and transport is one of those areas that we need to fill.
Duran Merchant, TDC's Vehicle and Sales Service Manager, detailed the specifications designed to meet passengers' unique needs.
Some of the features include, but are not limited to, safety and accessibility functions such as an automatic passenger door, an electric step that pops out from that door that creates ease of leverage for persons who may not be able to step as high. It comes with 4 wheelchairs and 10 individual seats with seat belts, all equipped for persons who are involved to remain safe while inside. And it also comes equipped with a minor PA system for the driver or conductor to be able to communicate with the passengers they're on.
Merchant also highlighted the interior design.
The bus overall has handrails on the inside to assist you with moving around on the inside of the bus. Overall, the bus is actually very well equipped to handle your present needs, as I understand them, for the mobility and accessibility of the persons that you're going to assist, which are aged persons and persons with limited mobility.
The features reflect a commitment to safety, comfort, and ease of use for all passengers. The acquisition of the mobility coaster highlights the power of collaboration between government entities, international partners, and local businesses. With funding from the Republic of China, Taiwan, and customization by TDC Automotive Division, the new vehicle stands as a symbol of what can be achieved through shared vision and commitment to the well-being of all citizens.
A group of young, passionate music students will take center stage this month as the St. Kitts Nevis community is invited to witness Recital Day, a live showcase of piano, vocal, and drum performances scheduled for Tuesday, April 15, 2025 at 6 p.m. at the David Freeman Center of Excellence at Market Shop, Gingerland. Held under the theme, The Importance of Music, the recital will feature performances from 4 piano students, 5 vocal students, and 2 drummers, trained under the guidance of music educator Miss Vinnell Powell and the Booker Beats Academy. Miss Powell, who has been instrumental in mentoring both piano and vocal students, says the event is much more than a concert. It's a public display of growth, discipline, and the vital role of the arts in shaping confident, expressive individuals. The event also helps broaden the island's cultural calendar while giving young people a positive and creative platform for development. Tickets are priced at $20 in advance, $25 at the gate, $10 for children, and free for children 5 years and younger. Recital Day is presented with the support of JSE Bookkeeping and Support Corps, Booker Beats Academy, and Polish Me Pretty Massage and Spa. For more information or to purchase tickets, contact 869-668-4199.
The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force on April 7, 2025 officially charged Aubrey Webster, 69, also known as Katuba, of Brooklyn, New York and a national of St. Kitts, with the murder of Iselin Pitt, a 60-year-old resident of New Road who was brutally stabbed to death on April 5, 2025. According to the official police release, the incident occurred between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. at the victim's residence in the New Road housing development. Upon responding to a report, officers discovered Miss Pitt unresponsive in her bedroom bearing multiple wounds. Sadly, she was pronounced dead at the scene by medical personnel. The news of Iselin Pitt's death has sent shockwaves throughout the New Road community and the wider St. Kitts and Nevis. Before the formal charge, Webster was in custody assisting with the investigation. Described as a beloved community nurse, Pitt was a certified dialysis nurse at the hemodialysis unit of the Joseph and France General Hospital. The loss is deeply felt by those who knew her, and the community is grappling with the senseless act of violence. An autopsy was conducted on April 7, 2025, by resident pathologists Dr. Adrian Nunez and Dr. Nautica Phillip. The autopsy report officially identified the deceased as Iselin Pitt, 60, female of the New Road housing development in St. Kitts. The cause of death was determined to be hypovolemic shock, severe blood or fluid loss that prevents the organs from getting the oxygen and nutrients needed to function due to multiple stab wounds. This homicide marks a tragic disruption to a period of relative reprieve from homicides in the Federation. The Citizen Security Secretariat responded to the incident, expressing sorrow and extending condolences. They noted that St. Kitts and Nevis had gone 5 consecutive months without a homicide, quote, a feat not witnessed in over 2 decades, end quote. The Secretariat calls on the public to partner with the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force by sharing information and remaining vigilant. They emphasize that, quote, every citizen and resident has a right to feel safe in their home, in their neighborhood, and in their country, end quote. The police continues to urge cooperation with the community. The community is encouraged to support one another and work together to ensure safety and security in St. Kitts and Nevis.
The Nevis Disaster Management Department, NDMD, is encouraging all residents, farmers, and relevant stakeholders to remain alert and proactive as drought conditions remain a concern across the region. The Caribbean Drought Bulletin for April 2025, published by the Caribbean Drought and Precipitation Monitoring Network, revealed mixed weather conditions across the region between December 2024 and February 2025. St. Kitts and Nevis in particular was predominantly normal to moderately dry. Looking ahead, regional experts predict that long-term drought could impact large rivers, reservoirs, and groundwater by the end of May 2025 in areas such as central Cuba, the northern Bahamas, and parts of the Guyanas. However, St. Kitts and Nevis is not currently in a drought alert zone. Though St. Kitts and Nevis is not currently in a drought alert zone, the Nevis Disaster Management Department still recommend preparedness and responsible water use due to the ongoing climate variability and water resource strain across the region. In a notice issued to WINN FM, Nevis Disaster Management Department recommended that households, businesses, and especially the agricultural community practice water conservation and remain informed, as no one is immune to the crippling effects of drought. The 2025 World Water Day theme, Glacier Preservation, emphasized the impact of climate change on global water sources. Though there are no glaciers in St. Kitts and Nevis, the effects of their loss, rising sea levels, shifting weather patterns, and water shortages underscore the importance of protecting the Federation's water resource. The Federal Minister of Utilities, Conris Maynard, continues to remind consumers of their responsibility to conserve water and emphasizes the need for behavioral change in how water is dealt with.
Our water rates, which have not been increased since 2001, is about the cheapest anywhere in the world. Yet there are many customers that do not pay their water bills. This is not fair and reasonable to those who do pay their bills. We therefore have given the Water Services Department our support to ensure that everyone starts paying their water bills. If you're experiencing any kind of financial difficulties, visit the Water Services Department and discuss with them options for a deferred payment plan to deal with your arrears.
During an April 4th, 2025 press conference held at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort, The St. Christopher National Trust provided a comprehensive update on the ongoing restoration of the old Treasury building. Key figures from the Trust shed light on the project's progress, challenges, and future outlook. Kevin Taylor, president of the St. Christopher National Trust, initiated the conference by outlining the Trust's core mission and historical background.
Today, our goal is to provide our valued members and the public with accurate information regarding the restoration project on the old Treasury building, home of the St. Christopher National Trust and Museum. The St. Christopher National Trust is a non-governmental organization that was established by an Act of Parliament in the year 2009. The Trust transitioned from the St. Christopher Heritage Society, which was established in the year 1989. The primary objective of the Trust is the administering and preserving of sites, buildings, objects that are of archaeological, architectural, artistic, environmental, and historical importance on St. Kitts.
Taylor further detailed the building's history, noting that the construction of the Treasury building began in 1894. It was completed and occupied as the Treasury in 1896. It is the official home of the St. Christopher National Trust and Museum. Highlighting these structural issues, he explained,
repairs to crack walls were done over the past few decades, but these past repairs utilized modern cement which reacted with the original limestone mortar. Ultimately, the use of Portland cement led to further cracking and even crumbling of the surface of many of the walls. Additionally, the roof is in dire need of repair, which leaks threatening historical artifacts that were housed in the museum on the upper floor. In 2018, minimal scaffolding was erected to stop crumbling stones from the rooftop from falling onto the sidewalks. Numerous assessments made it clear that specialized expertise would be needed to repair decades of old deterioration.
The president then addressed the financial aspects and contractual agreements, stating,
monies were allotted in the national budget passed in December of 2022 for restoration work on the building. A contract valued at $1.8 million was signed between Parvenir Restoration Trinidad and the St. Christopher National Trust on behalf of the government in July of 2023. Parvenir is an industrial leader with an outstanding reputation. The National Trust building restoration was estimated to take 9 months for completion.
He acknowledged delays.
Amendments were made to the contract in August, and after a 10% mobilization fund was paid, work got underway on the 11th of September 2023. The project saw a significant amount of ordering going up around the entire building to protect pedestrians moving in the vicinity of the edifices. In December 2023, there was a break in work for the carnival festivities, and Parvenir and his crew returned to Trinidad. They returned to St. Kitts in January of 2024, but left soon after due to the lack of funding by the state for work that had already been completed. The outstanding monies were eventually paid in July 2024. However, additional costs incurred by the contractor due to client delay were not paid until February this year, 2025.
Despite setbacks, Taylor remained optimistic.
Parvenir has submitted an adjusted schedule to our project manager, Mr. Limburg Alvaranga from BOA Architects, and is preparing to be back on the ground in St. Kitts as we speak. Work is scheduled to resume this month, April 2025. The Trust and Parvenir have received a commitment from the government of St. Kitts and Nevis that funding will be made available to complete the project. Due to the amount of time that has passed, there will need to be a reassessment of the structure and completed work by the restoration specialist engineer Daniel Steele. By bearing any significant issues, it is expected that the project will be completed by year end.
Project manager Lindbergh Alvaranga clarified the project's financial scope and addressed previous reports of a $3 million allocation.
With regards to the sum for the project, the sum quantity was original for the construction or the restoration of the building itself. So that is just one part of the project. So we want to restore the structure. So that's the 1.8. It's actually 1.835, but we won't be going into that much detail. As for the $3 million quote that you heard before, I'm not sure where that came from. The ED can speak to that. But I know that there is a larger project which involves the fixing up or the repurposing of the interior, and maybe the additional funds would have gone to that.
He continued by emphasizing,
I'm not sure what the allocation of funds was, but I can speak to what was signed in terms of the construction budget. The other part of your question, which is the alternate sources of funds, I can't speak to that either. But I can speak to the fact of the construction budget.
Etsu Bradshaw Keynes, Executive Director of the St. Christopher National Trust, shared her perspective on the project's revitalization since she assumed office.
I must say that this is a project that I fought hard to revitalize in 2022 when I took office. A lot went on before me, a lot. And when I was able, with the help of board members and some other committee members and Mr. Alvaranga and his team at BOA, we were able to restart the project. So I am not in a position to talk about any $3 million. What I know is that when we sat down and we calculated what it would take to complete this project, as my good project manager, an able, capable project manager said, it was about 1.835, which we know that $1 million of that is now allocated for this year. We don't have, the trust does not have any other source of funding for this project. It is a project that the state has committed to fund. So we don't have any other source of funding at this time.
Bradshaw Keynes then described the trust's revenue streams.
The trust, as I know, based on reading the act, the trust is, sorry, people have this number to call. The site is vested in us. But our funds, our revenue, I would say comes from 4 sources. Membership. Secondly, we have a small subvention, and I say small because it's a subvention of $17,500 that we get from government monthly, and we have bills to pay. And the other 2 sources are, I now would say 3, I apologize, the museum, the gift shop, and the documentation center. Now, everybody knows that we are closed at this time because of the restoration project. So the museum, we don't have that revenue right now. The gift shop, and I know we'll speak about that later. We'll also speak about the museum later, but right now, the museum is closed. Unfortunately, we had to make sure that we protected those important documents for the documentation center. So they're all put away in storage. So those are the sources.
Larry Armony, a founding member of the St. Christopher Heritage Society, provided critical historical context, particularly regarding the relationship between the state and the Treasury building.
I was present when an arrangement was made with the government of the day for the St. Christopher Heritage Society to occupy the old Treasury building. So an arrangement was made between the government of the day that the St. Christopher Heritage Society would occupy the building and establish the headquarters there, and that they would, in a sense, manage the restoration of the building. So a memorandum of understanding was drawn up between the government and the St. Christopher Heritage Society, in which it was understood that the government would maintain the building and the St. Christopher Heritage Society would establish and manage a national museum, for which it would get a subvention from the government for that purpose. The building was never vested into the St. Christopher Heritage Society. The building is the property of the state. So I think that should be clearly understood. And the memorandum of understanding was never, as it were, maintained, or shall we say, the responsibilities of the state towards the maintenance of the building had always been problematic.
He explained that the stop-and-go funding was a challenge. Harmony highlighted the Heritage Society's past initiatives.
So we're at a place now where we, in a sense, are part of a saga that began many years ago, where there would be funds allocated towards the maintenance and repair of the building for certain periods, and then no funds for other periods. And even the subvention to the St. Christopher Heritage Society was very sporadic. As a matter of fact, the actual initiation of maintenance of the building, in terms of the roof, in terms of the flooring and all that, were instigated by the St. Christopher Heritage Society, who sought funding for that purpose. Much of this funding were from agencies, other governmental agencies, German, French, etc., and they were sanctioned by the state. But the funds were actually raised on the initiative of the St. Christopher Heritage Society. And the management of the museum continued under the St. Christopher Heritage Society until, of course, it morphed into the National Trust. So I think that we need to put these things into context. Thank you very much.
The ongoing restoration of the old Treasury building is expected to be completed by the end of 2025. In regional news, the Consolidated Contractors Company Caribbean Incorporated looking to alternative markets. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that report.
The rising cost of doing business is hitting the Caribbean, and it's coming by sea. New tariffs imposed on Chinese-built vessels are likely to disrupt the delivery of critical materials like bitumen, used in everything from road paving to roofing. In this light, the Consolidated Contractors Company Caribbean Inc., or CCCCI, one of the region's largest construction firms, has already begun to seek alternative markets for its supply to keep its projects on track. Bitumen is an oil-based product used as a binding agent in asphalt and is shipped in solid form via special sealed containers and must be heated before being pumped into a high-tech mixing system for use. Nelson Louison, the managing director of CCCCI, tells GBN about moves afoot to mitigate possible disruptions in their supply. Each 20-foot container of bitumen yields roughly 500 tons of asphalt, enough to pave about half a mile of road.
Just about in the last month or two, we have been looking at alternative sources, and even more so with the tariff and the Trump and all these complications of Chinese sheep or what kind of sheep they may be, we had to look at sources closer. Unfortunately, in that form, we cannot get it in the Caribbean per se. So we are looking at some sources in South America where we are very close to coming to arrangements to have a easier shipping route so that we can have at least more reliable weekend, I would say, 30 days to 45 days.
However, he said the issue of supply disruptions has been ongoing since the COVID-19 pandemic.
The source of Tomokank, because they are one of the world's leading producers of bitumen in this form for transportation purposes. And mainly they source some Bahrain, Norway, and different parts very far away, quite so. So when you order, you have a long gesticulation period. It is an oil-based product, so you have to pay in advance in full before they deliver. And you can wait sometimes, like before COVID and so, you could have gotten bitumen, let me say, in 21 days. Since COVID and the supply chain of shipping has been problematic, there are sometimes 3 months. We have to pay and wait.
Luzon provided the update during a media tour of its Mount Hartman quarry site on Monday, where basalt rock, which is commonly used as an aggregate, is in abundance. CCCI executives confirmed that despite growing logistical pressure, they remain ready to meet local demand and across the region.
We also make ourselves available to support any technical working group that seeks to address issues of promoting inter-regional trade, overcoming some of the nagging logistical challenges which impact the efficient movement of goods within our region, and also other avenues of innovative support to local small business interested in utilizing our aggregates for valuable products.
In an interconnected world, trade policy decisions made thousands of miles away can hit close to home. While the long-term impact of these tariffs is still unfolding, companies like CCCCI are adapting. Reporting for GBN News, I am Nisha Paul.
International Labour Organization Annual Labour Ministers Meeting opens in Guyana. News Source Guyana has that story.
Minister of Labour Joe Hamilton called on his regional colleagues to take bold steps to protect the future of workers in the region, in the face of the many challenges facing the Caribbean. Minister Hamilton made a statement during the opening of the 13th International Labour Organization meeting of Caribbean Labour Ministers. The event, which opened at the Arthur Chung Conference Center, Liliendal, is being held under the theme Decent Work for Resilience, Securing the Future of Caribbean Labour. According to the Labour Minister, the conference is sitting to discuss key issues facing the region, such as labour migration, social protection, skill development, occupational health and safety, and the formalization of the informal economy. The discussions, he noted, are not only timely, but are also essential for securing the future of work in the region.
But if we are to sustain momentum as a Caribbean community, then we must not merely acknowledge labor disparities within our respective societies. We must actively address them, collectively and individually, through robust, structured, and expansive national and regional initiatives.
And Prime Minister Mark Phillips, who delivered the feature address, noted that bold steps must be taken to safeguard the rights and dignity of workers and their employers.
The challenges we face as a region are mounting, from climate instability to shifting global labor trends, from digital disruptions to growing informal economies. Ladies and gentlemen, therefore, our response toward the well-being of our labor force in the region must be coordinated, deliberate, and bold.
Meanwhile, the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Gilbert Hungbo, said the region has made a lot of progress in its labour relations and in its efforts to secure the rights of workers. However, he issued a call for more to be done in a collaborative way.
Ladies and gentlemen, the path forward requires collaboration, trust, and a shared commitment to building societies that prioritize fairness, that prioritize dignity, that prioritize opportunity for all.
Guyana also signed the Decent Work Country Program, which represents a tripartite agreement and commitment to a program of action to develop a harmonious labor market.
We now bring you these international reports.
Now, Russia has welcomed news that the US and Iran are to meet for indirect talks on Tehran's nuclear program. The Kremlin says it's long supported a diplomatic settlement to the dispute. Iranian state media says indirect talks with the US will be held in Oman on Saturday, led by Iran's foreign minister and President Trump's special envoy. Well, announcing the meeting during Benjamin Netanyahu's White House visit yesterday, Donald Trump said Iran is going to be in great danger if talks don't go well.
We have a very big meeting and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'll be really great for Iran, I can tell you that.
Well, I'll be speaking to Dr. Roxanne Farmian, a lecturer in international relations at Cambridge University. This was her assessment on the likelihood of those talks being successful.
I think they're in better position than they have been in the past under Biden, for example, when the talks did not go anywhere. I think Trump is very motivated to try to open up the economy of Iran, which has been very much in a backwater for so many years, and that would certainly gain him the accolades of changing a relationship that has been hostile and very cold with the United States after 45 years. So if he is able to establish a deal that really lift sanctions, and I think the Iranians are quite keen for that because their currency is plummeting and their economy is in very bad shape. Inflation is rampant. So I think they are more open as well than they have been for some years.
A quick answer to this question. How close is Tehran to any sort of nuclear device?
Well, it's producing more advanced enrichment of nuclear material than it has been before, which is worrying. On the other hand, it has consistently claimed it is not making a nuclear weapon, and most experts agree it's not, and that its main reason for the nuclear program is to use leverage to lift its sanctions.
Let's start with all the tariff chaos because China says it will fight to the end after President Trump threatened to increase tariffs on Beijing even further. Donald Trump has said that if China doesn't remove the 34% tariffs it's threatened in response to his earlier tariffs, he would impose a further 50% tax. That would see Chinese imports into the US facing a total tariff of 104%. Well, that's the opening bell. It comes with the backdrop where we are a day away from the country-specific tariffs coming into effect. In Europe and Asia, the stock markets have made gains but are still well down after last week's announcement and days of market turmoil. Well, Donald Trump's trade representative is being questioned on Capitol Hill on the tariff policy. Jamieson Greer defended the president's policy and told senators that almost 50 countries had reached out to make a deal. Well, let's hear more of what has been said in that cross-examination because Senator Ron Wyden asked if the tariffs will go into effect as previously announced.
Yes, they're scheduled to go into effect. We are having negotiations with all kinds of countries at this time. The president's fixed in his purpose. The nature of the emergency that I discussed earlier is not something we can wait on anymore. So we will have the president's plan go into effect, and we're coupling that with immediate negotiations with our partners as they seek to.
So it's not a question of something being scheduled. You're committing this morning that they're going to go into effect.
This is what the president has said, Senator.
For how many countries? I understand it's over 50.
That are negotiating with us. We have about 50 that have come to speak with us, and I'm constantly talking to my counterparts I have staff right now at USTR meeting with others, and we will have the tariffs in place. And if the other countries can come to an agreement on reciprocal trade, then that's something that the president can consider. I don't want to prejudge the negotiations or the president's decision, but that's what we're doing.
Speaking to Parliament's liaison committee here in London, the UK's Prime Minister has said we need to keep our options on the table when responding to the US trade tariffs.
I'm obviously very disappointed to see tariffs in place. I don't think that they are good for our economy or for economies around the world. My instinct is that we shouldn't jump in with both feet to retaliate. So in that sense, I'm not changing my plans. I think calm, collected response. Obviously, we have to keep our options on the table and do the preparatory work for retaliation if necessary. But I think that trying to negotiate an arrangement which mitigates the tariffs is better.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Hannah Miller, who's been listening to that exchange, and a lot of questions, obviously, on tariffs and other areas. But tell me more of the sorts of questions and answers put to the UK Prime Minister and more of his thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, on tariffs in particular, Matthew, he said that he was disappointed to see them, described the last few days as very challenging, as well as the clip that you just heard of Keir Starmer there. He was asked whether there might be any support for British businesses along the lines of the support that was given during the COVID pandemic. And I mean, essentially the answer to that was no, not in that kind of form, although it was very clear from the speech that he gave yesterday that the way the government is thinking here is about kind of shaping British industrial strategy and trying to support certain sectors to boost jobs and sort of accepting that these tariffs are here to stay, it seems, as much as they are trying to negotiate them away, accepting that they may now be a reality and trying to kind of boost the economy in that sense. He was also asked questions about a whole array of issues, from welfare, foreign aid, social care as well. In some ways, I have to say, at this particular committee, the questions were perhaps more interesting than some of the answers. We've got used to these liaison committees in the days of Boris Johnson being kind of moments with great fireworks, and there weren't really any of those today. He managed to kind of deal with a lot of the questions in quite a calm way, commit to writing to the committee sometimes if he wasn't sure of the answer, but no kind of huge moments, as it were.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
new mobility coaster enhances accessibility for vulnerable groups in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Young musicians are set to shine at upcoming recital in Gingerland.
Police charge Aubrey Webster with the murder of Iselin Pitt.
St. Kitts and Nevis not in drought alert zone, but authorities continue to encourage preparedness and responsible water use.
St. Christopher National Trust provides update on Treasury building restoration. The Consolidated Contractors Company Caribbean Incorporated looking to alternative markets. International Labour Organization Annual Labour Ministers Meeting opens in Guyana. Internationally, U.S. to hold direct nuclear talks with Iran.
Thank you for listening.